9 is
Nice.
taking the problem that you've uncovered in your empathy insights and focusing in on one challenge that's worth solving. It's like, we can't do everything. What I like to say is, if you're trying to do everything for everyone, you're doing nothing for no one. You need to really, really identify what is the problem we are trying to solve and who is it going to help. And so in the way I teach it, we kind of fill in the blank framework of, I've got this user, they have this need. Here's what would be game changing for them. So once you've really solidified a user-centered problem, the next step is ideation. So that is bringing together, hopefully you have a team with you the whole way through, but ideation really relies on diversity of perspective. It's a time-bound brainstorming session where you are purely focused on generating as many ideas as you can. So there's some different strategies you can use. It is all about generating. It is not about evaluating. It is, how many ideas can we get on the table? Mm-hmm. Once you have come up with as many ideas as you can within a limited amount of time, right? Like, you got to put some time bounds on that for people who are naturally like, that's not going to work and that's not going to work. Like, you will have your time to evaluate, but right now we're just generating. We then, kind of the second part of ideation is narrowing those ideas down to the ones that you think have the most potential. And rather than saying like, what's the best idea, the way that I do it is I have people think about it through 3 different criteria, and we pick ideas from different categories. So one of them is like the long shot idea. What is the most out of the box, innovative, crazy? I don't know if it would ever even be possible, but man, it's awesome to think about doing that. Like, let's not leave the long shots behind because we think they're too hard. The second one is most likely to succeed. Like, what's an easy win? What is something we know we could do? It's going to make a difference. We could knock it out pretty easily. Like, let's consider those ideas. But my favorite one, of course, is the most meaningful or the most likely to delight the user. So going back to our empathy research and what really matters to these people, which of these ideas would our user love?
Yeah.
So when we have those different ideas, we pick maybe 1, 2, or 3 of them. We then carry those on into prototyping. So this is where the play begins, where we create very low resolution, rough and dirty models or representations of our idea. Like, I literally have a box, I guess it's down in my basement, of dollar store craft supplies, Post-it notes, tinfoil, pipe cleaners, balloons, very purposely cheap and disposable items.
Yeah.
And I say, build some representation of your idea. So, the phrase, a picture is worth 1,000 words, a prototype is worth 1,000 pictures. It is helping me because, again, if you and I are on a team designing something, we may have this idea that on paper we've agreed to, but my picture of it is very different than your picture of it. And it's not until we start building it and putting it in a context of how a user would interact with it that we start recognizing, oh, we're kind of thinking about this differently, or we haven't thought about how the user is going to get introduced to it, or where they're going to be when they are able to use it, or what's going on around them in this moment. So we build out a physical representation. It can be an actual like product that you're building with resources. It can also be, if you're feeling really brave, a skit. This is what I make people do in the workshops because it's the most unusual, but it's the most powerful. And that is, we literally act out the scenario, but we bring in somebody from the outside to be the user and have them, we would say like, okay, so pretend, an example I use in my trainings is you're going to get your car serviced, right? Everybody has experience and feelings about having to go to the mechanic. Very few of us have great experiences with that. So we say, all right, you have brought your car in for an oil change and you're walking into the waiting room.
Yeah. Begin.
Right. And so then there's somebody who's serving as the receptionist. There's somebody who's serving as the mechanic. We have these interactions. And in that way, So we've now transitioned from the prototype to the testing, right? They go hand in hand. You are eliciting real reactions from people, right? Like there was one, we did it for the first time, me and my teaching partner. He surprised me with a new prototype in a workshop, and it involved getting a shot, like a blood bank experience. And I had a very visceral reaction to his prototype.
So you must love getting shots.
He was standing there with tinfoil on his head with a big sign on him that was like Mr. Needle or something. And I was like, oh, no,
and the needle was like this long,
right?
this thick.
And it was like, in any given situation, it would have been so ridiculous to be like, this man is walking up to me with tinfoil on his head. But when I am invited to put myself in a playful, creative space,
I like that. Yeah.
I
You can be crazy. Yeah.
And then fill in the blanks and imagine this being a real scenario. And so prototyping is great. And sometimes you prototype just for the sake of learning and communicating amongst a team. Like, oh, we're not on the same page. We need to prototype this. But really, prototype then is used in testing, which is getting that idea in front of a user and saying, here's what I was thinking about. I'm sure it's not right. What do you like about it? What do you wish was different? What would be helpful about this? What do you, like, what do you, it's hard to say, what do you not like? Because people are really kind and they're not going to tell you a lot of times what they don't like. But you can watch their nonverbal reactions using the framework of I like, I wish, I wonder is a really powerful one because it's getting feedback without saying, what do you not like? What do you wish was different? Right. Yeah. And what you have done now is started a new round of empathy using your prototype as a conversation starter.
Yeah.
So a lot of times you can get more empathy work out of testing a prototype than you can just straight cold empathy work.
Yeah. So I have a weird parlay here because of your tinfoil hat. I wonder, when you describe this, when you describe this prototyping context, and there's a level of vulnerability, like, hey, you're saying this guy's got a tinfoil hat, and you're kind of putting yourself out there, but it's creating an environment where you don't feel condemned for doing that, right? So when I think about just in our society and a lot of people that are getting attached to a lot of these wild conspiracy theories, and that's what they're doing. They're doing what you're describing. They're kind of doing it. I think the challenge that seems like they're doing it in a real way. But when I think about a lot of the people I'm talking about, it's usually in a private conversation. They're not like usually broadcasting it. But I wonder if in a way they're trying to prototype something. Maybe the outlet is problematic in a way, but I wonder if that's a way we could approach that type of situation, is to see it as a form of design thinking that's maybe we could help in sort of work out and redirect. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, this is a new application of design thinking, so I've not given a lot of thought, but it is fascinating. I think,
they want to be heard and they don't want to be condemned. I mean, it seems like that at least would be an interesting.
So this would be, to your earlier question, this would be an example where my response would be curiosity. I think, right? The people that I know that buy into some crazy conspiracy theories, they are convinced, right? Whatever information they've been fed. And if I try to argue them out of it, it's not going to work. But if I go, what's interesting what's interesting about that to you? And how does that change how you approach things? And if I can be curious with them, one, it's a little more interesting for me.
Yeah.
But it helps them maybe think more critically.
Go into more of that. Yeah, that's interesting.
Because when you ask people questions and they're having to think about it at a level beyond, I saw this on Instagram and it makes sense. When you ask questions, they have to pause and reflect. Does that really make sense? Or do I really think that's true? Or what am I going to do with that? They are now, rather than just defending and kind of saying the same sound bites over and over again, by digging deeper, you help them realize it's at some point there's not much deeper to dig.
Yeah. I think though, as someone on the other side of that, like sometimes you get to some shocking places, and we want to react. But I think that framing that you're describing maybe helps us not have that reaction.
Yeah. Um, because then if you're coming at it as a design thinking perspective, right? Which may be a stretch for design thinking, but in the sense of how do I help solve a problem for people? This person is coming to me with some thoughts, with some feelings. How do I help them? I want to listen to them. I want to figure out what really matters to them. And maybe it's they just need an outlet to listen and I don't have to try to change their mind. Maybe they need validation and I could say, I don't agree with you, but I hear what you're saying. Right? Like
Yeah.
what is it that they're coming to you for and sharing
Yeah.
these stories?
Yeah. What's the reading between the lines? I think that's a hard thing for me to figure out is what is it they want? And sometimes you can ask, but sometimes they don't even really know how to say what they want.
And sometimes they just want shock value, right? They're wanting
That could be part of
they're
it too.
wanting
Yeah.
you to react.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. And then if you react, you're giving them what they want.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's kind of that's my go-to response. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. So for them, either doing something like that or ignoring it is probably a healthier thing. But if someone is feeling insecure or wanting just to be heard, then that might be another curiosity might be a way. So that's the prototyping. So what follows prototyping then?
So prototyping and testing really go hand in hand. So at the end of testing, there's this as I said, testing kind of naturally flows back into empathy. But in that process, you want to be asking yourself, what am I learning new about the person, the users? What am I learning new about their need? And what am I learning new about the solution? And so that's where, when you finish the testing phase, you've gathered more of this empathy work. You say, did I learn something new about my user? Did it open up some other doors that I want to go explore? Like, they had a response in this testing that I didn't anticipate or didn't experience when we were just talking before. Let me go explore. Let me go ask some more questions about that. You may then realize you've defined the wrong problem. You thought the problem was quick automotive service.
Yeah.
What you find is that they really want to be able to trust. And so if trust is this new issue, if you've redefined, you've like the problem I was aiming for in my first round wasn't quite right, we need to redefine the problem. So then we're back in that define phase. And now that we've got a refined problem, we need to brainstorm again. We need to ideate again around the new problem, build a new prototype, test it again. What am I learning new about the user, their need, and the solution? Back through it again. And that's where each time, in theory,
so the
you're getting
testing
closer
would
and closer.
then recycle back into empathy. Is that
Yep.
what you mean? Okay.
Yep. And there's like this iteration kind of pause button in the middle that is, what have we learned, right? And so to go back to constructive developmental theory and the process that we teach in our leadership programs, this idea of taking a step, right? I'm trying something new in my leadership and how I show up for people. That's my prototype. I've taken a small step. I've prototyped it. I need to pause and reflect. What am I learning new about myself? What am I learning new about the people that I'm trying to have influence with? Okay. So how can I do something different this time? And so anytime you are introducing this reflection point, there's development, there's growth, there's learning. And so it's really important that we don't skip that. And what I find a lot of times when I work with teams who are actually going through a design thinking challenge is they go through this process. I can sell them on going through the 5 steps of design thinking, empathy to testing. They get feedback from testing. And then they're like, cool, all right, all we need to do is make those changes to our solution and then we're done. And to say, no. Like, we really need to think about, what did you learn new in all of these areas? Is that solution still the right solution? Because once you get to testing, if you're not intentional about it, you can fall in love with your idea. And even if it's made out of pipe cleaners and tinfoil, you fall in love with it. Which is why we need to have the stories, the inspirational empathy stories to come back to ground ourselves in, because we need to fall in love with our users, not our solutions.
Yeah.
And so if I come through that testing phase and I go, my user just didn't love it, it didn't solve their deeper need, I need to throw away my tinfoil and start over and recognize I solved the wrong problem. And so, you made the comment earlier, and we've chatted about this, that as a whole, design thinking can help you it can help you get to the end faster, right? Because we are making sure we're solving the right problem in a way that is desirable to our users. However, in these early phases, it can feel really slow because you've taken 5 steps forward and you may have to take 6 steps backwards and realize you were solving the wrong problem. Like the Embrace infant warmer.
Yeah.
Right? They'd gone through this whole cycle. They built their cheap incubators. They realized we don't even have the right user. We got to scrap all of that and start over.
Yeah. It's like going to Disney World and then you end up in Ohio,
Right. It can feel like you are slowing down.
Yeah.
But you're slowing down to make sure you have the right problem so that when you go to launch your solution, your chances of success are way higher. You're going to get to that endpoint faster, and you're not going to have to do as many kind of redos on the back end if your product isn't successful right off the bat. And so that process feels messy. Because I've got to be able to say, I got it wrong. But when you're committed to solving the need for your user and not committed to your idea, it's really powerful. And I think that's
why it's so important to start with empathy, because you want the commitment there so that you have something to make it easier to let go of your attachment to the solution. Right?
Are you a small business owner? Have you hit a glass ceiling where year over year, you cannot rise above a certain revenue level? Check out Jason Scott Montoya's book, The Jump, to discover how to level up your leadership and pivot your entrepreneurial passion to the highest level.